Here we go. Here we go. All right. I
Yeah.
think that we're live, and we already have quite a few people jumping in. It's the afternoon for me. Hi, I'm Deshaun. I'm a Spring Developer Advocate. I'm here with my really good friend, Tim. Tim, why don't you just do a quick introduction? Just a tiny one.
Yeah, sure. I'm an engineer, and Deshaun and I are working in the aviation industry. And Deshaun and I were having a quick discussion about how to do some integrations, how to do the where on the spectrum from monoliths to microservices you should be if you need to be pragmatic about stuff. And Deshaun's next statement was, well, why don't we have a live stream and have a
Let's just
discussion
do it.
about this?
I feel like these are good conversations.
Yeah.
I always we chat at least once a week. We have been for a few months, and I enjoy our conversations. I enjoy your perspective. So it would be nice if we could share all of that stuff with everybody. But this is one that I think we can share with everybody.
Yep.
This is a topic, and I like the way that you said it. It was like, hey, what is that pragmatic approach to architecture? So we've got some system that we need to feed data. The system's no good unless we feed it data. So
Yep.
we've invested. We said, hey, we think this thing is going to work, but we need to feed it data. And that data is going to come from, I think we said 15
Somewhere
different
between
places,
15 and
15,
20
20 different
APIs.
places. And some of them are going to be like event triggered, like, hey, oh, something happened,
Yep.
go pull some data or something. Oh, hey, we got a new
Yep.
load. But then there was also some like cron batch type process,
Yep.
like, hey, every hour, every whatever, every day, go do this thing. And we're wondering, right? For those of us that have been doing this for a while, we said, like, yeah, like just do them all as microservices. We'll figure it
Yep.
out. They can connect to each other. They're going to be deployed separately,
That's
and
that's the first response, right? So
yeah,
you look at that. It's like those are 15, 20 entirely independent tasks. None of them would be related. So your first thing is if you're on a cloud provider, yeah, why not do cloud functions and that kind of stuff? So that is the first thing, and then you uh, look at that and go, well, I look at that and go, I think we're moving the cost somewhere else because I think that starts if your environment isn't set up for that kind of stuff. I think then you need to be very aware of what the cost implications of doing something like that are.
100%. I like to draw pictures. So let me just draw some boxes and lines. How does that sound?
Yeah,
And
let's go for it.
whoops, not that one. This one, and even better yet, let's like do this one. We have something. Our new system. And you know what else I'll do?
New shiny system.
Yep, I'm gonna grab this. Here, I'm gonna do it like this. I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna go here. I'm gonna enable the shareable link while nobody's looking. I'm gonna copy it and I'm gonna push it to you directly, and then we can both draw on this as we're playing along. So now I sent the
Sure.
link, and and then I will put this back. So hey, we have new shiny system, and we have yeah 15 things or API. Let's do this. See, boop 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 boop. Right, we have a bunch of things where we're getting data,
Yep.
and some of it's going to be push.
I'm working my way around Excalibur.
Yeah,
I was hoping for like can you paste things into here, by the way?
yeah,
Okay. I'm going to look for like a clock or something.
yep. Uh, so this, yeah, you got kind of a menu up here,
Yeah.
and some of it is going to be like, I'll say like a cron trigger. Trigger.
Yeah, fits quite nicely.
So does that make sense? Like some of these are event, some of these are perhaps
Exactly.
cron triggered, but they all need to get data into new shiny system. So
Correct.
one approach is like, hey, I could build. Oh, I want those connected. I could build something that's like, oh, one for each,
Hmm.
right? I could definitely do that. Some microservice.
And to add one more detail, so I'm still new to this uh, uh, new shiny system.
Mm-hmm. Oh
Um,
yeah.
is that they have a GraphQL API, and because they're a third-party system. Sorry, that's not the best way to say it. Because they are one of those uh, systems that are open to integrations with other people, but in a controlled way. Uh, Conceptually, they is only have one endpoint for adding an event, and not an event, sorry, an entity. So those APIs could actually all funnel to one API that makes the call because
Yes.
it's just sending an entity.
Yep.
Like this, the API that side doesn't care which one of those APIs, like what the object is underneath.
Right.
So that could also just be like one microservice that does that end call to the integration.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're looking. We have options. So we could, yeah, say like, oh, hey, I know how to pull data out of this, and I'm going to send it to this integration. The other thing is we could just like say, hey, why not just trigger something that knows how to integrate?
Yep.
So, so what else? What else do we need to consider? When we're
Yeah,
at this
yeah,
point.
here's a nice one because here's a nice one is that data is the cool thing in the world at the moment. So in some part of this, we also want to be adding data to a data lake,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
So
So then the
so
question is,
somewhere along this process, um, we also need to be adding data to a data lake.
could it be out of here? Right. What does that
It's a
look
good
like?
question.
Right.
Hmm?
Uh, if
Yeah.
I've got some API, maybe I'm even doing this. I don't know. Do I do any pulling?
So there will be some pulling, but it's going to be in the minority.
Okay. All right. But yeah, it still happens. So these things are going to be triggered in different ways. It makes sense to maybe have something simple, centralized to do this
Yeah.
versus, right, this microservice. I could have, a microservice for each of these for all the different ways that I'm getting and pulling data. But some of us, we've already been through that.
Hmm.
Some of us has already like seen the pains of, oh, everything is a microservice, and sometimes that gets complex, and oh, all the other things that we have to deal with, like the network and security and routing, right? All of those
Yeah.
things and maintenance, right?
And,
What if
and
6 months from now there's
there's
5 more APIs?
and there's also simple stuff like logging. How does the
Right.
logging work? Um, uh, I'm going to say actuators, and you will correct me to what I actually mean. Um, so, like, just checking that your checking that your systems are behaving in the correct way. Now, if you've got 15, 20 microservices, um, that maintenance isn't quite the correct word, but thank you, observability
Yeah.
was the term I was looking for. Observability becomes harder.
Yep. So yeah, that all makes sense. Versus, maybe I should put that here. Modular. And I said, before we jumped on, I said, my default. This is my default. Yeah, I'll put that in. That's like not a reason. I'll just say, and the reason is path to
I
production.
thought you were the font of all knowledge. So I mean, like, if it's your default, that's it, right? Like, how dare I question the Sean?
No, we have conversations and we think out loud and we learn from each other, right? That's a big part. And for anybody that's watching, wherever you're watching from, please do me a favor. Say hi, tell us where you're joining from, because my parents watch. No matter when I do a show, I know that I'll always have at least one, and that's my parents watching at home. Hi, Mom and Dad, I love you. But it's Friday. And if I needed to get something out today, if I had a project that started today and I was trying to be pragmatic about how much work do I have? If it's just me, do I want to create work for other people, right? All of this is more work that I'm creating for other people. That's outside of my scope and reach. I don't have all the access to all those things. But typically for a monolith, and I'm also thinking that we have some sort of platform in place. So I'm thinking from the developer, architect approach, app-centric approach. What are my concerns? How many things do I have to get to production? My life is a whole lot better if I've got one thing. If when I need to make an update, I've got one thing. I don't have to coordinate releases. That helps me a bunch. Then also the integrations, like the number of points. If I've got 15 APIs or 15 microservices that are connected to this new shiny thing, then I've got 15 sets of credentials, right? That I've got to do 15 different integrations that I've got to, are they the same? Because what's going to happen, they're going to, I did it this way there. They're going to do a copy and paste. And then if I change one, then I have to change 15 of them. Which these are just me sharing scar tissue of what I've dealt with in the past. And Donald, thank you so much for joining from South Africa. I'm glad you're here. Wonderful.
I'm from South Africa as well. So now I live in the Netherlands, but from South Africa as well. I was going to say, and I think that's part of the thing I said at the beginning was about being pragmatic, right? So it's like architect. If you look at the pure architectural way of saying this, you look at microservices and you go, "Oh, that's clean and neat and tidy." But then it's kind of like you talk about exactly what you were saying, and it's like, yeah, but we're the scar tissue does not come across in those architectural diagrams.
One of the things that we said, and this is when we decided that we wanted to jump on the stream, is you said, "Hey, but I want to run this all on my laptop. I want to be able to run these things locally." We have plenty of time to get to production, right? This is a massive project. This is not a small, like, hey, we can do this in an afternoon. This is a massive project. And we know that there's going to be issues along the way. There's a team. It's not just a team of one. There's a team. There's more than one person. So we want to be concerned with, what does this look like for everybody? If I'm in this 15 microservice approach, and I've got 15 ways of integrating, then I've got to not just coordinate, and when I change one thing, I got to change for everybody, but I also have to coordinate across the team. How many microservices can you run on your laptop? That number has definitely changed over the last few years, right? I like to have things running locally. I like that rapid developer feedback loop, right? This is not a small project. And if I've got to do a commit and then go through a pipeline that takes a week or a day or even like an hour to get feedback, that's too long. So I like to have things running locally. And I
agree. That is part of the what we were saying, is that kind of you want to run as much of your system as you can on your device. Like if you are developing, if you've got API number one, and maybe we end up going into RabbitMQ and then it goes to the integration point, like you don't want to end up having the configuration where you're running each of these individually on your machine and you've cobbled some configuration together. I would at least like it to be as close to the production setup as possible. It just uh, feels like that's what you should be trying to do
I
rather
think that's
than
like, you're not alone, right? We have this 12factor.net,
yeah.
right? And we have like, they've kind of held true. They're definitely under a
Hmm.
refresh. But one of the things here is this dev prod parity. Like, we want to be as similar as possible,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to be deploying to a Raspberry Pi when I'm deploying to a mainframe, right, in production, right? I don't want to be testing on a Raspberry Pi when I'm deploying to a mainframe. But one of the things is, if we are building our applications to be flexible, hey, we're choosing Java. We can run Java in a lot of different places. But one of the other things is, some of those higher level concerns beyond the app. Oh, hey, it runs on my machine. We want to be as similar as possible. And what does production look like?
Uh, yeah. So I mean,
What's
for us,
production
we've
look
got
like
a.
today?
I mean, production looks like your green box at the moment, right? Because
Yeah.
we are still trying to work out how to do it. But um, so what we were trying to work out is what we're thinking is, at the moment you've fundamentally got three options, right? You've got the like cloud functions option. You would have something like you'd have the Kubernetes option, and you would have the I think it's just broadly called container service option, right?
Yep.
So for me, I feel like the cloud functions option is from it's out for a lot of the reasons we spoke about, but also I don't really know how to run that locally on my laptop.
Yep.
Um, yeah, which feels a bit odd. And even when you get to the deployment stage, so we use Terraform to deploy. If I look at the deployment stage, it's not to deploy our infrastructures. It's not the most native fit to Terraform. It feels a bit clunky.
Yep.
You end up, so if I remember the Terraform docs, essentially you set up a cloud function. I'm going to call it like container, in that you don't actually deploy the apps, but you say like, oh, we're going to deploy a cloud function, and then you use the CLI when you deploy to actually deploy the individual cloud functions. And
Oh
maybe I'm
yeah.
being a little bit idealistic, but
Nope.
that
Like, yeah.
kind of feels wonky.
Yep. No matter how we deploy it, right? There's complexity, and the more of those things, the more clunky things that we have to deploy, that becomes painful, right? If we've been around for a while, right? I'm always quoting Nate Shuda when I say this. Like, experience means you've been around long enough, right? Long enough to see, to see the outcomes of your decisions. Like, if we decide to do cloud functions today, and then this number increases later on, maybe when we're working on another project later on, somebody's got to be doing that maintenance, and
Yeah.
we have to be thinking about the people that are coming after us. And if you've ever been around to see, like, oh yeah, I did that once, and I realized that later. I should put a T1 or a T0 over here, right? Later, it was more expensive, right? Later, it caused other problems. So we're trying to look ahead, but not to. We don't want to gold plate things. We're just trying to make it easy on ourselves, and that's why
So,
another
Deshaun,
reason.
are you trying to say this is one of the reasons why most developers only stay at a company for like 3 years? So they don't have to see the outcomes of their
I
own
don't have the
decisions.
statistical analysis there, but it might be, right? It might be. So, yeah. So the other thing here with monolith, and I've made the mistake. So let's just be honest about it. I was in that
yes.
startup
So
life.
we're
Oh, I got a
making
team.
the
We're going to go
jokes. Yeah.
fast and it's going to work. But then we had to maintain it. Then we had customers. We had to maintain it. And customers are asking for things. And it was more. And if I knew now if I knew then what I know now, I would be choosing a monolith. And I will always choose a monolith first because I've seen the pain that I could cause myself. I'm being mean to myself if I decide, oh, microservice architecture, that's going to do it because we're going to scale and it's going to be great. And dreams are good, but here's the thing: by starting with a monolith, I don't prevent myself from scaling into all of those other concerns. But if I start with a microservice architecture, I do I do have a lot more concerns that I have to take up early. If I start with a monolith, I can I can wait I can wait until we've got an MVP out the door, right? I can wait until we actually need to scale beyond one instance or beyond three instances, whatever it is. I can wait to do those things. And in the meantime, I can have that fast feedback, right? I can be making decisions and I can be doing it in production and delivering value. This is a big reason why I start there. And then let's just take it one step further. The other thing that the monolith, when I say monolith, I'm gonna like be like a little bit spring monolith. So I'm going to talk about spring monolith. The other thing that I get is like all of those architecture support testing, right? I can validate the guardrails that it provides, right? I can get those things out of the gate.
I mean, modular makes it a much easier sell for the monolithic application, right? Because modular, those guardrails there are, the guardrails there are significant, and they really, I'm not going to say stop the software entropy because we all know like, that's impossible. But that it really like forces you to adhere to the modules you've like the rules you've put down. You're like, this is a module. What are the rules I put down? It really forces you to actually stick to those.
Yeah. So should we jump into some code? Should we talk?
Yeah, sure.
Because when
There was one other thing I wanted to add here, like again going back to the thing we were talking about being pragmatic. So some of these APIs would be like cron jobs that call from, say, a REST service, right? But some of those REST services will be dumb. Well, actually, so I mean, like, if we are calling from a REST service and we are asking on a date range, the first time you call that REST service, you're going to get you're going to get all the new items. You can send that off to your new Shiny system, no problem. Second time, you're going to have some updates to those. So you're going to have some new items, you're going to have old items that haven't changed, and you're going to have some updates. And now you need to actually work out which items have changed. Not a huge problem, right? Question here becomes, do you store that in the data lake? Because you still want to save that data anyway.
Yep.
But like data lakes aren't transactional. Like if you are looking ivory towers, a data lake is not transactional.
Yep.
Right. So
let me ask you this before we answer that question. When you're running locally, do you plan on having a data lake local?
If by data lake you just mean like a Postgres server, yeah, you'd have to, right?
Okay.
No, I mean, when I say you'd have to, if you wanted to develop and test / run things to do it properly, then yes.
Okay.
Right.
So yeah, there's always a question: the data lake, what goes in it, how do we use it? Because
Yeah.
it is all about the data, and the way that we are going to consume that data is important. Do we want just like current state, or should our data lake contain all of the updates and be like event driven, like so that we can rebuild it from scratch and replay the streams, if you will, so that we can
Yep.
get to current state by replaying the data, right? Sounds like Keith. I'm not sure what
I think that might
that's.
be an alien.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I mean it's wild. There's a lot of things that we have to concern ourselves with. But thanks for hanging out with us because I want to start small. One of the things, and I don't know where it came first. It might have been Steve McConnell in Code Perfect. What was his book called? Code Complete. Like just don't gold plate from the beginning. Don't. And I don't know if I'm quoting the right place. Don't gold plate your code. Like that just runs into problems. So what should we do? I'm telling you, this is my default because I know that I can go. I can get out the door. I know that I'm not creating more work. I'm gonna say it, not creating too much. And that's now or in the future, right? There's to get a microservice architecture out the door can be complex, especially when these are our options, but also the maintenance in the future, right? All of this stuff, that's going to be a factor. So if I want to do this, yeah, I think I want to start with a module. The key here is these exist. These are running. We're not building these things. These places where we're getting the data. There are APIs. Let's talk through what this might look like. And what I want to do is because I'm a geek and we both speak Spring. I'm going to slide this over here. I'm going to go over here and we're going to build some code. I think. Let's go. Wait, do I have this? Oh, fantastic. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a directory. We'll just call it Pragmatic. And we're going to go in there. And we're going to say Spring project catalog list. And I'm hoping Spring project list. Oh, wait. Yeah. I'm hoping that I have a project that we can quickly get started. Do I have a module here? Good. Here's one from upstream. Let's just do that. So this is going to be a little old. But we should be able to do Spring new mod. Yeah. Modulith.
You could always use this as a perfect time to try out your Spring App Advisor upgrades.
Oh yeah. We could if we want to do that. So let's. I think that I could do that. So we have here. Let's look at what version we're on. 3. That's not really that far.
No, that's not that old.
So let's just see if we can do this real quick. Do I have a Spring App Advisor running? See if I'm in the middle of my things.
Should we skip that for now?
Watch this. All right, I'm feeling bold. Let's see. MVNW test. Let's see how it goes. I mean, I'm feeling pretty good. Oh, I saw something went wrong.
I think modulus you'd probably need to get like 132 or something, right?
Let's see where it failed. Yeah, I might need you.
I think you might need to update your modulus version.
All right. You think it's 132?
I think it's 132.
Like let's see. What could possibly go wrong? We're doing it live. Oh, it still had something. But I don't have the right Java version, so I have an SDK man receive 2103 Liberica. I think we should be on 2105. SDK env install. All right. I'm gonna no, that shouldn't affect it. It says, hey, I received this, but we're going to keep on going. We're not going to let that bother us.
Sure.
One of our tests doesn't pass, but nothing's like crazy. Just because I know that it's late for you. So let's go and take a look at what we really have here. We got some documentation. I don't know where this. I think this is actually mine. I don't think this is a from the upstream. Let me go take a quick peek. Oh yeah. So this is mine. I didn't grab the right one, but we're okay. We're still okay. So hey, I have this thing, and I've got some documentation. And this documentation, it generates the docs. So this is another benefit that I get from Spring Modulus. Now, does that mean if I decide that, hey, I want to use a modulus architecture, does that mean that I couldn't, for all these APIs, that they couldn't be modulus? No, I could still use Spring Modulus for my microservice architecture for these reasons, right? I might want to have these documents created. Let's go and look at the target. I think it did generate.
Well, although I would argue that you would lose the benefit of the all-in-one from the diagramming perspective, right? You would lose the benefit of all of those things in one place.
That is exactly right.
Although where that should really not fit into your overall decision-making process.
Yep, there's benefits, but Spring Modulus, great project. I can get documentation, I can get architecture, diagrams, and they match the code. That's a massive benefit. Agree?
Absolutely.
Other things, I can put in rules, right? We have these rules, and I can go to my test, my modularity test. I can say like, hey, what is here? Let's set up that SDK. It jumped over another screen. I want this 2105. Please index. Don't embarrass me, computer. So I can say like, hey, are we modular? Do we have the right visibility for our packages? And what it's doing is going to look at each of the modules that we have defined, and it's going to say, hey, are you good? Let's just run that. And like, hey, do we have a modular architecture?
So these I find these the modularity tests really cool, and I don't know if you're familiar or aware of this, but so underneath it for the modularity tests they use Arch Unit, and there's actually another Arch Unit library called Arch Unit Spring, which is there to give how would you say it, like tests that are for clearly it's late in the evening, like it's Arch Unit dash. I'll send the link to you. Send you the link. So it's some predefined Arch Unit rules to to kind of specifically for Spring. So for in modular, the Arch Unit rules are really there just to ensure the modularity. But Arch Unit itself is a really cool project to allow
Yep.
you to define some rules. And here they've gone in and they've said like, well, these are what we think are some rules that should apply to Spring
Yeah.
applications.
And every org has different rules and different things, right? Sometimes, again, the Conway's rule or Conway's law, like your organization, your code is going to match your organization, your architecture is going to match your organization. And if your organization sucks, then so is your code, right? And vice versa, right? So sometimes you want to hard code those rules. Like, hey, I'm in this org. I can't talk to this org directly. I've got to go through this other org. I got to go for legal reasons or for cost analysis, right? So that's the other cool thing about Spring Monolith is I can bring in it. It allows me to bring in my own rules, my own guardrails. I get great guardrails out of the box, but I can bring in my own guardrails. I can bring in those rules that I can be like, hey guys, this is how we do things. I can bring in my best practices, my codified best practices and patterns. I can bring that into Spring Monolith. This is powerful. So we can verify that. Another reason, especially when we're doing something shiny and new, another reason where we can kind of, as we're going, again, I feel comfortable talking to you because we've been doing this, but for everybody else, like I was a contractor, right? And hey, you got a year to do this thing, and we got plenty of time. We're just going to do this, and we'll change it later. Oh, we got plenty of time. This won't get a lot of traffic. Oh, we got plenty of time. Yeah, I'll document that later. We don't need tests right now. We'll do that later. All of those things, they become like a tidal wave of things that just add up. And as you get closer to the target launch, the bigger that wave is of things that you put off. You're not being nice to yourself. You're actually being a jerk when you do those kind of things. So stop. Listen to me now, hear me later, right? Stop doing that. If we can do these things and make it easy, like we went from 0 to we've got testable, documented architecture in seconds. Like we've only been hanging out here for a few minutes. And just out of the box, we get a lot of these benefits. So I'm going to just try something. I've never used this project. I'm just going to go and bring this in to our project because we're doing it live. And we're not like, this is
So, I mean,
not
I think these are fairly lightweight rule set. So just to give you a bit of an example, so some of them are, so one of them is dependencies of controllers. So essentially, so that rule just says all controller classes should only depend on service classes or repositories. And then there was there's another one, dependencies of repositories. So like repositories should only ever depend on repositories, not on controllers. So it's just like those kind of like de facto standard type of things that you shouldn't be doing, but sometimes they just kind of slip through.
Yep. I'm looking like, is there a quick way I could turn one of these into a test?
But so those I think should all be. I think they should just. I would assume they just automatically run, right?
www test. Let's see if we can go. And we do have one test that we know was failing already. All right. So, but we still had 6 tests and 1 failure.
We still had that one that failed.
So do we know, did any Arch unit, did we add anything to our tests? We didn't, right?
I must admit, I need to go have a look.
And that's okay. Like I'm opening the door. Received order completion. What is this test? Received order. Why did that not work? We can come back to that. let's just keep going.
Yeah, sure.
We'll come back because this isn't what we're focused on. We're trying to think, hey, is this the right approach? I'm still leaning into this.
Yep.
The other thing, right? We have our tests. We have our documentation that we can generate. That's also awesome. But we can still have this approach where if I've got a team, I can still work on my microservice slash module, and I'm going to use those interchangeably for now. I can still, I'm doing API one, right? I can still go and add a new package, API one, right? I can still do these things just like I am building a microservice, except I don't have to create another repository, right? When we decide to go on to API 3, I'm just going to do this, API 1. I can, hey, we're going to do 2 at a time. I'm going to make another one, API 2. When I'm adding and when I'm going through my list of 15 to 20 of these, I'm not having to, hey, hello from Brazil. Thank you for coming in, and thank you for telling us where you're joining from. Wonderful to see you.
Yeah.
But as I'm growing, I'm not having to create new repositories and new pipelines to get this out. Right? When I add new work, this is one thing for my team of 1, 2, 5. This is one way. This is easy to onboard to this project.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's a single module Spring Boot application, right?
Yep.
And I think the other thing that's really nice when it comes to the modular stuff is if you really buy into it with regard to the eventing between modules. And I think that's a really nice, if you're talking about this type of stuff, really makes a lot of sense, because if you do the eventing between modules, if at some point you get some, like one of these APIs explodes from a, like you've got to scale this one API at just a different level to everything else. Well, if you need to do that and it is communicating via the eventing, then it is much easier to pull out.
Agreed. 100%. Eunice, hello from Nigeria. I am
Hello there.
glad that you're here. Welcome. The amount of code that needs to happen to speak between different APIs. Hello from Colombia. Like, man, we're getting people from all over the world. This is awesome. I'm sending you a little back channel here. And the amount of code that we need to write to do the integrations, I was going to do this. If I'm communicating between these APIs, what am I going to do? Am I going to do event-driven, message-driven architecture between those APIs where I've still got a rabbit or I've still got some other message bus? Okay, that's an option.
Yeah.
But then why separate them when they could be modules? And why take that leap to bring in something like a Rabbit or a Kafka or a Redis out of the gate when with Spring Modulith, I can do it with the Spring eventing, right? Spring's own internal eventing. So I don't have to grow that far yet. Again, don't gold plate it, right?
I mean, I would argue with you on this case, right? Because the cost is so low. So if you add, well, with the modular, we can have the durability by using the DB stuff, but that feels like if you're doing that, then rather actually just have a RabbitMQ or something. Because one of the benefits of modular and the eventing system is actually having that durability. So if your app goes down, you still have those events. Whereas if you're not doing that, you don't have that durability. So there, I would argue that actually the cost of entry is so low.
Yep.
The value you get. That do it.
I won't argue with you.
Yeah.
Hello, hello. Thanks for telling us where you're joining from. It means a lot to me and my parents.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us, Keith, again. Um, this is great, right? We have this path. We can do the eventing, right? We can have these applications, these modules, talk to each other, yeah, internally. This is fantastic. This is what we want to do. I'm looking here. We stored something. We're updating. I haven't looked at this application in a while. We're listening. Here's we publish an event, order completed. And this is where our test was failing. But we'll come back to that. But to go from using the Spring internal event model to using Rabbit, it's just adding a dependency.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Adding a dependency, and then we're still good, and then we can scale and we can do all the things. But also, this idea of I want to run this all on my laptop, right? There's power there. So I'm going to do something I think that'll work. MVNW Spring boot build image dash p native. Yeah, I'm going to do that. And let's see what happens. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, I know. Because this was, remember when we started, it was 3.3.1. Well, with Spring Boot 3.4, look at, I was using, I'd already done it. Look at that. I was using the multi-architecture build pack, but I was using one
You're using
before
your
it was default. Right now that we're using Spring Boot 3.4, I can do this.
Nice.
Oh, I don't have to put it there. I can just do this. So this is going to be called, it's going to spit out its architecture version, and that's the only config, right? Okay, cool. So now I'll get a proper name for my build, and then it'll be easier. I can push this. Because what I did earlier today on another live stream was I stood up K3S, which is a really lightweight flavor of Kubernetes, but I also run it on hundreds of machines, literally hundreds of machines, and I've got massive clusters. So I run K3S and on a single Raspberry Pi, and then I put on top of it Corifi. And Corifi gives me the Cloud Foundry API. So I just walked through and I did that. And there'll be a blog post later today. So Dude Root says, recently I saw a talk of Oliver on Modulith, and it makes me curious because it sounds promising on a greenfield project, but what will your approach be migrating already existing apps? I don't know if you've seen me do this, Tim, but this is where I spend a lot of time. So watch this. Let's say there's two predominant architectures. There's the monolith, modulith approach, and then there's like the microservice approach. They're both good. They both have their strengths and weaknesses. But what if I've already got something in production? Now I would like to get some of this benefit. What does Spring Modulith do for me? Well, we talked about a couple of things. By adding Spring Modulith, one of the great things I can get out of the gate is I can get that documentation. I can get that modularity. I can start to unhook some of the crossed wires where we were just injecting beans from other projects and everything was public and we were just giving ourselves fits. I can start to unwind that by simply adding Spring Modulith, adding some of these guardrails, and it might be red. Your modularity tests might not pass out of the gate, but you get some guidance and you can put those rules in place and you can start to unwind a monolith. That's one place where this helps. And there's also like the new release, which I haven't done. I should bring Cora on. She'll tell you more. The new release gives you some flexibility to say like, hey, these modules are coming from a legacy and these ones are the new ones. So you can apply the
What
rules
it's
differently.
what I was actually just looking for. I was like, I
Yep.
remember seeing this somewhere.
Yeah. Let's look for Cora's talk that she did at Spring IO, Cora, Iberclyde, EID, Modulith, or Spring Modulith, YouTube. And her talk, like it was it was a slam dunk talk, and it's on the, here it is. This is the one. So let's just put this, make it so like this is the one. Let's just put it in the notes because I want you to see that. And that talk from May, it was, pre-existing the release that's out now. But go and watch her talk. She explains Modulith so well, and she'll get you interested. And she talks about not just Greenfield, but also what about your existing applications. And then let me just go and find it. No. She's going through the demo. No, that's not it. Here we go. This is the part where she's talking about, hey, I can have both in the same context, and that's amazing. So I highly recommend you go and watch this. But there's one more thing that I want to show you. Let's say that I have, and this is coming from a monolith. Let's say I have a microservice architecture. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to show you another repository, github.com/Sean projects. What is it? Sean project catalog. Man. So let's just say this is your big A app, your microservices, and you've got a bunch of apps that are running in production, right? And then let's say, remember we talked about, did I talk about this? No. We want to pull things in. This is the other reason I love Spring Modulith. Because here in my project, I've got inventory, order, API 1, API 2, but I'll show you the picture. Let me back up here. I've got this microservice architecture. That's running, and they're all doing this like, hey, yeah, this is awesome. I talked to this one and I talked to this one, right? And they're all doing this like crisscross thing. But the other piece here is it's running and it's code complete, right? It's feature complete. Running in production for years. And I'm trying to address Dude Root's question. Right?
Yep.
It's already there. Like, what about these legacy things when I have a microservice architecture? Well, here's, let's just try to imagine that these are the microservices that are all these, right? So all of these things are just running in production, and they're here. And what we already did was we took one of those and we said, hey, let's bring it down here into a monolith. It has inventory and it has customer right now. And let's say the next one is user or whatever it is, something. We're going to go pull one of these projects. The reason why we're looking for help here is because we've now got a bunch of repositories that need maintenance. Right? CVEs. And we had to do all the testing, all the validation, all of those things that come with. But it's a lot, right? Because there's just one person, probably an intern, right? That, hey, go and upgrade all of these from Spring Boot 2.6 to 3.4. Go do that. And they've got their hands full because that's a lot of projects. So the other option is, what if we didn't want to do that all the time? What if we wanted to do this automatically, continuously? what if we could just pull these projects down into this monolith? I'm going to show you one way that I like to do it. I'm going to do the batch. Oh, perfect. Oop. Tim found this documentation for the open application modules. I'll go ahead and put that into the chat as well.
You know, I think the interesting thing about the documentation is the note, right?
This feature is intended to be primarily used with code bases of existing projects, gradually moving the Spring Modulith recommended packaging structure. In a fully modularized application, using open application modules usually hints at a suboptimal modularization and packaging structures.
Yep.
So we're addressing the monolith side, right? And what I'm going to show you is like, this is a nice approach. I can pull these projects in to a monolith. I can go both ways. I can go from monolith, from monolith to microservice. That makes sense because they're modules and we can easily pull them apart. But I can also go from microservice down to monolith. And I'm going to show you how easy that can be. Because I'm going to go here. I'm going to look. Hey, here's my project. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do git init, git add dot git commit step 1. All right. Now what I'm going to do is spring boot add. What's one of our packages? Hold on. Spring project list. We're going to add something that'll hopefully work. Wait. We're going to add something simple, like a JPA. I think there's a simple JPA one. Let's go here. We're going to add this from Juice, and it's called JPA H2. So what we're going to do is we're going to say to this project that we already have, right? Git status, like there's nothing there. We're going to say spring boot add JPA H2. What I'm doing is I'm saying I want to pull whatever project here. I want to pull this project into my monolith. What? What did you just say? Yeah, I said I wanted to pull this into my monolith. And we can go look at what it did. It said, hey, let's go ahead and grab that project. Let's grab that microservice. Then let's merge the dependencies that we need in. Then let's refactor the code base so it fits, so that it all fits under dev Deshant monolith. Git status. We've got a bunch of changes. Let's go look at them.
Wait.
What?
Pause.
Yeah, I did. I know exactly what you're like. What did you just do? Yeah, I just pulled in another project into this existing project. So now I've got this other code.
Stop.
That's
Hold
exactly
on.
what I did.
How long has that functionality existed in the CLI?
So, fantastic question. Right there's two. There's a Spring Boot CLI. Right? There's the Spring Boot CLI. That's not what I was using. This project has been around for a long time. Right? This project is GA. Right? It's been around for that long. What I was using was a Spring experimental Spring CLI. I was using this, which has been out for a long time. It hasn't had a release in a while. I don't even know if I'm using the latest. But this project was, if we're being honest, this project was actually a large reason for, I'll show you the author. It's a large reason why we have Spring AI. Those two projects kind of came out around the same time. They were born from the same seed. Because what we were doing with, or what Mark was doing, or at least one of the paths, was, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I could add some of these guides, the Spring projects, the Spring guides that we all see, like Spring Boot Guide REST, right? These tutorials, these guides that we have, which we have a bunch of. Wouldn't it be neat? So I want you to notice, hey, here's the REST. I want you to look here, Spring project list, and you'll see that what came with the Spring CLI, the default repository. This is the getting started repository. You'll see that there's a REST. Where is it? Here. This project, Hello World RESTful Web Service, that's what this is.
Okay.
And what he did was he was like, hey, what if I could just like figure out, I could use these LLMs to figure out how to pull that code in, that example of a RESTful service into an existing code. That's what he did. And bottom line is it works. So I showed you that there was a couple of interesting things that it did, right? It said, oh, hey, here's, I'm going to get the code base from here. I'm going to merge in the dependencies that I don't see. And also, I'm going to refactor the code base. So let's go look at this project where we pulled it from. And this is all to answer, right? So source, main, Java, like the packaging, Java, dev, Deshaun, data, YouTube. It actually refactored it to dev, Deshaun, monolith, YouTube. Because my projects, my microservices were following those good conventions, that good, like, hey, good package structure, package by feature instead of package by layer. It was able to say, hey, from the root of this package, I need these modules, and it pulled the module in. And now let's just go see, like, hey, MVNW test, like, does it work? Does it work? So this, hopefully this answers your question as some of the ways that Spring modules, oh, I'm embarrassed. What does it say? Illegal argument exception directory is not supported. What?
Directory is not supported.
Where? What did I?
Although, to be fair, it is also showing off that is a modulus test failing, right?
Clean. No, it was a compile.
Is it a compile? Oh, it's a compile, sorry.
It might just be that I didn't have it. I didn't clean up before I did it. Huh. So what did we just do? We literally took a microservice that was running in production and we put it into, so now I have a single code base. So now I have, if I'm that intern, I've got one less project that I have to maintain. I have one less repository that I have to maintain because I took YouTube and I brought it into the modulith. Can I do it again? Yeah, I can. Like as I keep on going. So now let's go look at this. What version? Watch this. What version was this project on? 3.3.4. Now what version is it on? 3.4.2. Like in going through this process, now I'm also upgraded. This just came out yesterday. I'm on the latest, greatest version. I have the same code my tests run, because look at this. YouTube, my tests came over with it. I brought all the tests.
That was my question as well. So I assumed tests were going as well.
Yes.
Nice.
Git status. So this, I brought in some git ignore, or I updated git ignore. I made changes. I had already done that, didn't I? What did it? Oh no.
I think
it grabbed that.
No, you did change that. I think it was a 0.5, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's 23 now.
So it grabbed the Nick version, 21. It grabbed the Nick version because that's what it got from the other one. So it pulled in those changes. It's like, oh yeah, let's do this. But still, I get to validate this. Oh, last thing, it also brought in the docs. It brought in my README, so I can see exactly what's going on. It brought in the docs from that project. It brought it in so that I can do a diff and I can understand what I pulled in.
This
Fagio, long time no see. Welcome.
Is this using open rewrites behind the scenes to do this?
It could, but it's not. Is it not?
Is it just elbow grease?
It's just we have schemas, right? It works great with Maven, not so great with Gradle. We have a schema, right? This is one of the benefits of having a schema and knowing the schema also provides information. But still, like now, where are we in this conversation, right? Where I can either be pulling it from a microservice, so I could have my person go on build that microservice, but I can also then pull that microservice in. And JitterTed is here, and I want to tell JitterTed like this is something what we just did. I had a project, we had commits, and that project it worked. The project had an inventory module and a order module that were already committed and works in. Let's say that it was running in production, and then our intern is like, hey, I got all these other microservices that we need to maintain. And there was a YouTube microservice that we were maintaining and trying to keep upgraded because there's a microservice architecture. There's a lot of repositories, and it was over here. And what we did was we used the Spring CLI to pull in the code from this microservice that exists over here. We pulled it into our modulith, and it pulled in the proper packaging. It refactored the code to fit into the proper packaging because it wasn't in dev Deshawn modulith before. It was in dev Deshawn data before. It refactored it. It pulled in all of our dependencies. So we pulled in Lombok, we pulled in data JPA, we pulled in the H2 database, and the Java format plugin. We pulled those in. Those are the dependencies in this other project. We went microservice to modulith, and we could also, right, you can imagine, we can go modulith to microservice. We can go both ways. Typically, it's the other way around, but the question was like, hey, could you use for existing? Yes, we can use Spring Modulith to help us unwind, mess up our monoliths, but we can also pull in microservices into this project. And yes, hey, Lombok, we've all made bad choices, but here we are.
It's about to say that's a contentious decision, Lombok.
Right. So now let's do a new build. I'm doing MVNW Spring Boot build image -p native. Right. I still have my same packaging. So while that's running, I'm going to build a new image. But I'm also going to do this. I'm going to say Docker images pipe grep modulith. So we have this Deshawn modulith that we just made. And it says, hey, it's not a repository, so we're going to fix it. So it was trying to figure out what version. So I'm going to say Docker tag. I don't know. I'm just going to do it this way. I'm going to say just Docker push Deshawn modulith. v0.0.0 not a git. Oh, I did it before that. Let's just wait. We're going to get a version here when this is done. So this is going to take a minute. We're building a native image, ARM64. We're going to build it. And what we're going to do is we're going to push it to our Docker hub, and then we're actually just going to deploy it. So we're going to be here, and we're going to have, microservices versus monolith. It's fluid. Right? We use the architecture that we need at the time. And what we're trying to do is talk about, if you're starting a new project, where should you start? Should you start with microservice architecture? It makes a lot of sense. I got a bunch of APIs. I could code against those APIs and not worry about the others and go with microservice architecture. But then that brings a bunch of other concerns. Or what I'm trying to show is, let's just start with a modulith. Let's get the connectivity. Let's get to production fast. Oh, look at this. JitterTed says, I still have to try out Spring Modulith. Might have until I get past my TDD game MVP. If you haven't done the TDD game, I've seen it. I don't have a copy of it. I don't have it to play, but I've seen him working on it for years. Like, it's fun. It's really, really cool. And this whole approach of refactoring in TDD, the benefits, it's powerful. And there's easy ways to get there. ABM, always be modulithing. I might have to take that. Thank you. So we're here, we're doing these things, but I'm also trying to get to production. and I'm also trying to get to production on something reasonable on a developer laptop. What I've done is I've deployed K3s, then I deployed Karifi on top of a single Raspberry Pi.
Do you
And we're
mind
gonna
if we
try.
take a bit of a tangent for a second?
Yeah, that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Well, this is. Would you uh, mind expanding a little bit on what you were just talking about the TDD game? Because I think that's quite interesting.
Ah, yes. Ted, do you wanna join us? Here, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna grab an invite. He might be busy. Copied, and and he says streaming is all about the tangents. I'm gonna go over here to my Discord, and I'm gonna say give Ted an invite, and if he can join us, we're lucky. And we'll keep on going. If I can find out where my Discord window went, or it didn't go. Oh, it's doing all the verifying. Alrighty. So I have here. We see I have an image. I'm going to push that image here in just a sec. But I'm also going to invite Ted because he's awesome. And he will definitely contribute to this conversation. There we go. Boop. There. And if you can join us, fantastic. If not, that is absolutely
Yeah,
okay
that's
too.
fine. I thought it was quite interesting. I was curious to see curious to learn more, right?
Right. And this is a good, right? Marcelo, thank you for being here. He says, this reminds me of the Strangler Fig pattern to complete the migration, but I'm not sure. Yes, no, it should remind you of the Strangler Fig pattern, right? This part here, if I've got a bunch of these things, it works both ways, right? I can go from monolith to microservice or from microservice to monolith with this same approach. I just want to take a little bit at a time, until I get it into the desired state. So what I've done is I've pulled now, we have this modulith that has these 3 modules in, and we know that these modules can be microservices because that's where we got them from. So I could easily switch back. I could decide to deploy both ways, either way. I could also use this as a developer deployment if I wanted to do that much work. But let's just do this. Let's go back here and let's do CF apps because I have Karifi deployed. And let's see. Oh, wait, no, I have to deploy. I'm going to push this image. I'm going to say Docker push to push it up to my Docker hub so that you guys can all play with it. And there's Ted. Ted, welcome. This is awesome. It's always a pleasure to have you hanging out. And let me see if I can do it this way. I'm going to
Hello.
adjust.
Here we
Ted,
go.
meet Tim. Tim, meet Ted.
I assume any other people who join also have to have no hair on the top.
That's unwritten rule.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So now I have taken this modulith that we just made, that we cobbled together from a few different things, and I've deployed it to Docker Hub. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do CF push, and we're going to call it modulith because we're original. Docker dash image, and I'm going to give it that same name. And now it's going to go and grab that image from my Docker Hub, which is my storage for now, and it's going to deploy it. And we'll have this module deployed on, again, hopefully I didn't do this ahead of time. I've got a single 8 gig Raspberry Pi device. Oh, it crashed. Let's see what happens. CF apps. CF logs modulith. I should have maybe run it locally before I stood it up.
You're doing it live. Nothing could go wrong.
I mean, yeah, what could possibly go wrong? So there's no logs here, so let's try again. Let's do it. Let's see if we can do this Docker run. Let's see if it runs locally. Oh, so it says, hey, I don't have some of these things. So I did something, and I think that's because I did a native image. So let's try this. mvnw spring boot build image. And then I'm going to hand it over to you, Jitter Chad. Tell us about the TDD game.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't have the ones on. So the TDB game was basically came out. You can go check out if you go to tdb.cards. You can check out the not screenshots, it's a video where I walk through the game. And so it's a physical board game. And these days I bring it to conferences with me. So if you're at a conference I'll be at, you'll see it. The idea is sort of twofold. One is just the sort of precise process that I use for doing TD. Right? It's not just red, green, refactor. There's subtleties, there's nuances, and the idea was initially to create a game just to have people memorize that process. But then I started getting into it and started expanding on it. And now it's a full-fledged game, and I've had people who are not coders at all who played it just as a board game, and it's fun. And so what I'm working on now is two things. One is putting it online. So that's what I've been streaming about for months now. The other is I'm working on an expansion to the game to focus a bit more on the refactoring aspect of TDD, because right now in the game, it's mostly about this idea of when you write a test and it's supposed to fail, failing is not enough. You have to be really precise. How is it going to fail? Not just it's going to throw an exception, but which exception is it going to throw? And not just that it throws an exception and specific exceptions, but like what method is it going to display? And so that's, to me, one of the, and it's amazing how often like you predict and it failed in a different way. So that's kind of a core part of the game. The refactoring is not a big part of the game now, and so that's why I'm working on the expansion.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. So yeah, like feel free to hang out. We're just doing. We're pushing. So I made a new image. Let's see if I can push this one. I think it's going to be named the same. Let's see if this one works. Maybe I should run it. Docker run this. Oh, that looks much better, right? So it was what I thought. There was some native image. Oh, we added a couple of dependencies. We added the Spring Arch Unit
The Arch
Spring
Unit
project,
Spring stuff.
and that's probably where we introduced the issue. But let's still the CF push. Did I do it from here? CF push. What did I call it? Modulith and dash docker dash image this. So let's just try it again. What could possibly go wrong? So this time it's not a native image, but it's still an ARM64 image that we're pushing. And it crashed again. Oh. What? Let's do this. Let's see. Like maybe it was like complaining.
But maybe for your ARM stuff, it's better to have the native image because Raspberry Pi, right?
Yeah, it's Raspberry. It's a $50 Raspberry Pi. But the whole idea is, of course, I could run this locally. Like we just did that, right? Sure. I stood it up. It works locally. But I got a new toy. Yeah. It's called Karifi V0.14, and I'm going to do this. So, excuse me, let me indulge for 1 second as I try to...
What I was going to say is maybe remove Spring Arch Unit dependency if we think that's causing a problem and redo the native build.
Yeah. Okay, so the whole idea here is we have a really easy path to go forward. Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of complexity. We can get this moving. Yeah. Do you want to run into this problem once or 15 to 20 times? Right? That was the idea. Is like, hey, we're going to have things that come up. the lay of the
Yeah,
land was there's
absolutely.
15 to 20 APIs that we got to get some data from into this new shiny system. Do we want to build 15 to 20 different microservices, or
No.
do we want to build a monolith, right? Which we could pull apart if we run into difficulties later. I'm glad that you said no automatically. It's kind of a good default stance. It's like microservices are cool, don't get me wrong, but so are monoliths. And why not like get the best of both worlds and give yourself the ability to move? Because I went back here, our good friend Nate Shuda, like just we've been around long enough to see the outcomes of these decisions. And if we gold plate too soon, if we make these, oh yeah, microservices is going to be great, way with the future. If we do that too soon, we're going to run into problems.
Also been around long enough to see the outcomes of other people's decisions.
Indeed, indeed, right. So here's where we're at. Do we want to try? Why did this? What did it say? It said, "Hey, I'm trying to start." We have another tool, and again, I'm indulging myself here. I'm gonna go look and see what did it fail at. Oh, it thinks it already has that image. That's why it's not doing it. It thinks it already has that image. It's the same image name. Let's do this. It was like, no, I already got it. So it was still just trying to run the other image. So let's Docker tag this to this Docker push.
So while Deshaun's typing there, the one of the things that we were also kind of like we were discussing where on the spectrum from like microservices / cloud functions to a monolith do you sit on doing something like this, right? So I think both of us kind of immediately discarded the functions like cloud functions microservice thing because of all the baggage that it kind of comes with. And then the other thing that we were looking at was we want to be as close to production on our laptops as possible. So then in my scenario, your two deployment options are either Kubernetes or whatever the container service type of thing in the cloud is called for your cloud provider. So then looking at that going, okay, so Kubernetes is flexible, but I always feel uncomfortable with running, the individual Java applications in running the individual Java applications and not running them in Kubernetes on my developer device because it's fairly far away from production. And then I know that there are things like Scaffold and I've now forgotten. I was going to say, is it Pants? No, not. There are a couple of these type of things out there, but my familiarity with them isn't that great.
Right.
And I was trying to work out, like, if you're doing the development on your device and you want to have as much of your ecosystem up as possible, how do you do it in a way that doesn't feel like a nightmare for the developer?
Yep. So my proposal is like, hey, if you can afford 8 gigabytes, max, right? I have an 8 gigabyte Raspberry Pi. I've deployed K3s Kubernetes. I've also given myself the Cloud Foundry API with Karifi, so that if your abstraction is just some container service, like this kind of fits the bill, right? All we did was CF push, or it worked this time. But I got all of my routing, and these are live routes from my little Raspberry Pi. So you can go to, this is the one that we had running before the show, and you can go and you can see, like here at monolith.apps.pykarifi.cc, which is that Raspberry Pi, our app is running. And I can also go and look at task, is the one that we did earlier. It doesn't have a Redis, so it's down. But these are running. These are the apps that are deployed to my, let's even go and show where they live. These are those 2 apps that live in this space on my little Karifi cluster. That's 8 gigs. It's using 34% of the memory. But you can see, like, hey, here's the time, how long we've been running. 2 minutes and 40 seconds. So I've given myself by using Karifi, I've given myself both of those runtime capabilities. Yes, they're both running on Kubernetes, but I've given myself that kind of just, here's my container, go run it, take care of the networking for me. And I also have Kubernetes, right? I've got Kubernetes, I've got the Kubernetes API here, just, right, kubectl will get pods. I have a Kubernetes API, but it's all running. It could be on my laptop, but this is on a Raspberry Pi, which is even more difficult. But most people, right? I have a 16 gigabyte MacBook Air where I can do this exact same thing, right? And it'll be even faster, right? So I'm curious. Sorry, let me indulge. I'm gonna go and I want to look at this one and I want to see how fast it started up. Oh, it started up. It had to do the H2 instance. Where's the?
I think it was further up, wasn't it?
Yeah, the process
11 seconds, right?
Where's the one that I normally take?
Initialization completed. One line below.
Yeah, but there's one that it puts it in parentheses. It says, "Hey, it started up." Maybe I'm not seeing it.
Oh yes, process. What
Right,
the
this one. That's the one.
process running?
Yeah. So because it had to start at the database, 22.74
Sure.
seconds. And if I go back and I look at this one, which is a native one, that doesn't have its Redis. Let's do this. Because I want to just go Control D. I'm going to delete that pod. But because it's Kubernetes, hopefully it'll bring it right back. And it says, hey, container creating, and we'll get to see that startup time. I just want to do a little quick startup in 0.413 seconds. 0.413 seconds. So that's just, I mean,
Yeah.
So we can do these things locally. That's pretty neat. That's pretty neat. So this is the kind of stuff. These are the kinds of questions. Hey, let's go circle back to what was our original. Where should we start? If I'm trying to be a friend, trying to be a colleague, I'm going to say, hey, just let's lean into the monolith for all of these reasons, because we can run all this stuff locally. We can save ourselves a lot of pain in the future, right? If we need to scale differently, we can. Everything is going to exist in a single repository. I'm going to just get status. I'm going to just add all this stuff. Get commit.
Yeah, for me, the refactoring ability that you can do in a modular outweighs so many other factors. And like you said, like, you know, if this aspect is slow, then you can always pull it out. If you've got your proper module list set up, pulling it out is relatively easy. And I see all these people struggle with, you know, you've got 2 people and they've got 20 microservices. I'm like, what are you doing? Why did you do that? What was?
But it's
you know,
cool.
It's like, well, that's what we do. It's like, and how's that working for you?
Yeah.
And the
I've lived
ability
it.
to, you know, and so this aspect of the, okay, how do I test what I'm working on? How do I run what I'm working on? Like, you know,
Right.
modular,
So
you hit run.
not that long ago, if I said I had 20 microservices, then they were all Spring Boot apps. Not that long ago, I wouldn't have been able to run it. I would not have been able to run it on my laptop. Right? Today, with all of the improvements in the JVM and with Java and the runtime efficiencies and native images, I can run hundreds of these apps locally. One of the other conversations we were talking about these cloud functions and what does this look like if I'm running a task, right? I have the Kubernetes API. If I'm running a task, I'm running I would reach for a Spring Cloud task. I would deploy it as a Kubernetes cron job that says, hey, every hour go and stand up this thing. It would stand up, and when it's done, it's done. It'll shut down. However much memory it's going to take, it's going to take. But for me running locally, doing my development, I can have it. I can have a small workload, go make sure that these tests pass, and I can do that. And I can do it, and I can still have my IDE open. and I can have all of this stuff running so that when, let's say that we're all on the same team, Tim, we're all on this team, we're all going to work on this together. The other piece that we have here with Spring Modulith is, let's say I'm working on the order management. Spring Modulith allows me to just do a slice test on a module.
Yep.
So I can be making changes without doing a commit. I can be, hey, am I good? Am I good? Am I good? Without having to, I can have that fast feedback loop and I can keep everybody happy. So when I do a commit, I've already validated that things are working. You automatically get it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like one of the core reasons. I mean, I remember, I learned about microservices back in 2011. Right, James Lewis, a talk at QCon stuff, and like the main reason, and we were actually struggling with this a bit at the company I was at, is it was somewhat modular, but we were starting to step on each other's toes. We had classes that were too big. It's like, I got to modify this part up here, and you've got to modify this part down here. Merge hell. And the ability to say, well, we like the ability to refactor all this code, but we also want to remain separate.
Yep.
Best of both worlds, in my opinion.
Yep.
With the module, just you work on that stuff, and then there's going to be stuff where we're working on stuff that is somewhat shared. And if that's what's happening a lot, then we can think either more modularization, because having a modular architecture, you're also fighting against the nature of like, well, let me just pull this thing over here and pull this thing over here, and so having the guardrails built in, which is what the Spring Modular offers, and then building more stuff on top of it. Like, I wish there was capabilities in the Java language to do certain things, but with something like Arc Unit, and sometimes a lot of work because the API is sometimes not always obvious, you can then say,
So I'm so happy it's not just me who battles with the Arch Unit API.
Break a test.
Yep. It is. So it's my default going forward. And that was how this whole conversation started. Ted, he was like, hey, like, what do you think? Where should I be? And I was just like, let's just go and talk about it. Because as soon as he said, hey, I also want to be able to run it locally, I was like, hey, I got the thing for you. So we have a lot more opportunities and options if we start with Modulith. If we start on any of the other sides of the spectrum, we limit ourselves, or we create more work for ourselves by starting with the Modulith. And I'm going to put Modulith in the middle. I have more flexibility, more options, day 2, day 3, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I fundamentally agree with that. What I'm also looking at the moment. So I think the let me rephrase it. The part I'm like focusing in or diving in on the moment is for local development. If you deploy in production to Kubernetes, because it's flexible, there's also the baggage of Kubernetes. Like, Kubernetes is not free either, right?
Right.
And there's also baggage to that. So, and if you're deploying to that, for me, you need to be probably running against that for what your development work. And like, I don't want to be writing
YAML.
Kubernetes config files.
Yeah. Here's the thing.
Right?
It's 2025, right? Right? It's 2025. Yeah. And Kubernetes has been around for a long time, right? It's been 10 years now, right? And we went through the hype cycle. It's great. It's awesome. It does its job. It continues to get improvement. It's a great thing. The other thing is I can run it. So I was running on the Raspberry Pi, but I want to just kind of like show like, hey, I've also got I've got kind running inside. If you've got Docker, you can have Kubernetes. I have a Kubernetes control plane inside of my Docker. This is a not beefy. It was beefy a while ago. It's 32 gig M1, right? It's nothing compared to that machine back there, right? It's a little bit nicer than the 8 gig $50 Raspberry Pi though, right? But I can run multiple Kubernetes clusters, and you check some of the other streams. I have multiple clusters running at the same time, but I've also got, AI is a thing, right? I've got Olama running. I have things. You can have things locally because I want a fast feedback. If I want to get to production, I don't want to have to wait any more than a few seconds to get like, hey, does that test break the way it's supposed to, right? Can I continue to working? I want that fast feedback because we all want to, make money and maximize the work not done. And the less that I've got to push and wait, the more I can do, the easier I can get back to doing the other things that make me happy in life. Right? Let's maximize the work not done. And by starting with a monolith, I'm not putting, right, that was my other comment. I'm not adding work for the others now or in the future. It's a faster path. We deployed 3 modules. We've been streaming for 96 minutes. We've deployed 3 modules in this little monolith. We deployed it. It's up and running, right? It's here. But not only that, we got documentation for it. We have modularity tests that pass. We have documentation that's generated. Where's my docs? Here we go. We have documentation that's generated.
Are you wanting to be sharing your screen, by the way?
Oh, yep. So I was saying all that stuff, and I wasn't sharing my screen. I'm installing this. Like, we did things. I was saying, like, hey, we're not creating work for others now or in the future, right? We took our 3 modules and we deployed it. Our monolith, our thing is deployed, but we didn't just do that. We also have our documentation. It says unable to render. Sure, I'm just clicking buttons. I'm not reading. Yeah, okay.
That is the wrong button.
Yeah. So I don't just have documentation. I got diagrams that make it easy to understand what does this system look like for all the things. Remember, we imported this module that didn't have modules in it. We imported it, and I'm still getting this documentation. And I know that my application is passing all of my modularity tests. Like, we did a lot in 96 minutes. So when you're faced with something like this, and you're faced with a decision, what do I want to do? Maybe it's not the right decision for 12 months from now, but for today, for the start, this is the right decision. No matter what size team you have, this is the right decision. And I think that there's a number, right? There might be, if your team is 50 and they're spread across the world, maybe it is, right? Depends on, I refer back to Conway's Law like I did earlier. It depends on how your organization is structured. Maybe it is better to go that way. But I'm always going to, this is going to be, I need a reason not to choose monolith first.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, diving back to an earlier comment, if like API number 3 or number 4 outstrips all of the other ones, then you have the ability to pull that out and kind of like put it into its own thing and scale it differently.
Yeah.
Right. Even with your fancy migration tools, I think it's easier to strip things out than pull them back in.
Yeah, it happens. But the other thing is we want to be thinking about that. We want to be thinking about the future. Because I go back to this picture. If I continue to go down this path of pulling in these microservices, or we continue to go down the path of we're not going to develop microservices, we're going to have things in a single API, a single monolith, I have one less thing. Because in March, when Java 24 comes out, of course I want to use Java 24. How many repositories do I want to update? How many things do I want to have to take through that upgrade process? Right? Because then in May, I've got Spring Boot 4.0 or 3.5. I don't remember which one it is. But
I think that answer depends if you're a consultant or not.
Right? Oh, we had this conversation about the consulting and the maintaining, right? Like I can be the person that writes something and then bounces and then just leaves a bunch of work for somebody else, or I can be the person that leaves something that's easy to maintain, that's well documented. Yeah, we have options. And it's up to us, right? If you like your job half as much as I do the right thing. Keep your job.
Yep.
This has been fun. I know it's got to be like midnight now, right? Tim?
Pretty close to it. It's
Yes.
quarter to 12 my side.
All right, so we'll cut it This has been just what a pleasure. Tim, Ted, thank you so much, Ted, for jumping in with zero heads up. Tell us about the game. Your insights and your perspective is always super awesome. Tim, this was fun for me. Thanks. Hopefully everybody else got something out of it. We had quite a turnout from all over the world. Thank you, everybody. And yeah, stay tuned. Wherever you're signed in, check us out. And thanks, everybody. Thanks again. And we get a wave. Like, hey, take care. See you. Bye.
Cheers, guys. Thanks, everyone.